Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Squeak, and we have a lot to talk about today. Last week, the once classified JFK files were finally open to the public. Catalonia tried to declare independence. Corey Feldman tried to use crowdfunding to make himself great again, and we take a look at the shady side of the animation industry. This week, Feldman's crowdfunding scheme is torn wide open, the DNC finally squeals on Hillary Clinton, and a rogue gunman opens fire in the house of the Lord. All this and more on the Squeakly Report. We, the American people, are at war. How many rich cigar-chomping megalomaniac health insurance CEOs doubling their profits? How many people have to die before we're willing to admit that we have a problem here? My name is Squeak Attack. Get used to me. I'll try not to flip my lid too much. Catalonia. We've talked about it before. It's one of the major nacionalidades of Spain, home to a culture, a platform, and even a language all its own. Children in Catalonia are educated in Català, not Castellano, the language most of the country of Spain communicates in, which is effectively the Spanish that we teach in American high school classrooms. Attempts at the federal level to rectify this have been mostly met with a complete lack of civilian support, and they're also one of the wealthier regions of the fairly industrially insipid country of Spain, and they want it out. They decided that they would rather secede from the Union, so to speak, declaring themselves no longer an autonomous region of Spain, but rather their own independent country. Like Germany's Angela Merkel, Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy considers himself to be a conservative, and if this were a video, you would have just seen me showing off my air quotes. The reason this is so important is because Spain, like Germany and much of the United Kingdom, is a financially conservative country in many regards, but socially progressive and authoritarian. It's very different from American conservatism, which socially is classified more as like a classical libertarian kind of ideology, modeled in many ways after the ideals of people like Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, and James Monroe. But what's interesting is that Catalonia has a very balanced mix of leftist and rightist people, much more similar mindset to what we're accustomed to here in the US, and they're all sick of Rajoy. That's what led to this uprising. They're sick of tyranny from people like Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron. It's quite literally a matter of sticking it to the man. In fact, the only reason Catalonia ever became part of the modern iteration of Spain was to overthrow Francisco Franco. Now, however, in a very Franco-like move, Rajoy is exercising every last bit of authority he has in order to maintain control of the region. He's even sent armed men in to detain ballot boxes and machines in order to suppress the democratic rights of his own people. Apparently, there's a major conflict of interest between their democratic duties and their own national constitution. This would, after all, be a major loss for Spain, as Catalonia is in and of itself. Just Catalonia, the 34th largest economy in the world. Did I mention this is the equivalent of a US state or Canadian province? Yeah, they have a larger GDP than Hong Kong, and per capita, they're wealthier than Italy or South Korea. The EU hates Catalonia already, but they can't afford to lose them as things stand due to their economic superiority. This has led to a lot of tension. In fact, they won't even declare Català, one of the EU's official languages, despite being the 9th most widely spoken language in all of Europe. Maltese has about 6% of the native speakers of Català, and it is one of their official languages. Just another example of social and intellectual fascism being practiced by the EU. So Rajoy called his own vote over the idea of Spain assuming total control over Catalonia, and of course that vote also received majority favor from his own men. Even the US State Department seems to be siding with Madrid on this one, and that's horrible. The American people once fought tyrannical British control with every last resource we had, who elected a casino mogul as our president to defy leftist authoritarianism. Yeah, our government is opposed to Catalonia doing the exact same that we are probably best known for the world over. How is this any different from Brexit or what's been going on in Poland, Austria, and the Czech Republic? Seriously. Well, despite having been removed from his position as president and having his parliament shredded right before his eyes, their former president, Carles Puigdemont, issued a proclamation of national defiance. And while he is not calling for any sort of violence or organized uprising directly, he also said nothing to dismiss this idea. I personally wish him and his people the best of luck in their endeavors, a bon cop de false, if you will. On to our next story. One thing you might not know about me personally is that I enjoy a wide variety of artistic media, from drama and literature to video games and cartoons. I'm in my mid-20s, and as you can probably imagine, I grew up on Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Kids WB, Fox Kids, etc. When I was a kid, I wanted to become a cartoon writer, to write for a cartoon show. To this day, there are still some shows that I follow. Not many that actually watch anymore, like many people have cut the cord and no longer watch cable TV in favor of things like Netflix, YouTube, and Hulu. I'd rather listen to podcasts, which are the 21st century equivalent of gathering around the radio in the evening, than watch cable TV. I do, however, at least follow the progression of the stories of some shows because I want to support the artistic visions and endeavors of genuinely talented and creative people, and I don't want to divulge too much information right now, but I am currently in the process of writing a script for something in a similar vein to a cartoon show. More details on this will come in a later date. We're not here to talk about that now. But those of us who keep up with these sorts of things have dismissed Nickelodeon as of late for having lost sight of this spirit, with most of their shows resorting to over-sexualization of preteens, bathroom humor, and lots of SpongeBob. Which I'm as surprised as you is still on the air. Not for lack of genuine talent on their staff, of course. However, one show that has gained a lot of traction in recent years, and for a good reason, is called The Loud House. I've seen a few episodes. It's written and drawn really well. It has this almost classic comic book style to it. It's about this kid. His name's Lincoln. He has 10 sisters and one bathroom according to the show's official website. But the show actually manages to avoid bathroom humor for the most part, aside from the occasional fart or having to change his baby sister's diapers. And that's kind of a rarity nowadays. This show is prided by progressives for having, for example, a gay interracial couple. But unlike much of its competition, it's never in your face about this. It doesn't get preachy. It doesn't make you feel like, oh yeah, you're supposed to feel this way about these characters. They're just characters on the show. It's completely neutral. They focus more on the personal development of the characters than these kinds of political messages. Basically, it's everything a good kids show should be. So of course, something had to come along and screw all that up, right? Its showrunner, Chris Savino, the creator and big boss of their production team, was recently fired over sexual harassment claims. A dozen women, probably some of whom were involved in voicing the show's overwhelmingly female cast, filed claims against his behavior, including inappropriate advances and threats of industrial blacklisting. He's basically Nickelodeon's own little mini Harvey Weinstein. People are calling this the Weinstein effect. Suddenly, everyone is coming forward with reports of horrendous mistreatment of female employees, blackmail, threats of blacklisting, and so on and so forth. James Toback, who had the gall to say that he couldn't sexually harass people due to diabetes and a heart condition, yeah, we totally buy that, has been accused by hundreds of women of the same thing as Weinstein and Savino. We're still getting more details on what happened with the ever-increasing pile of Bill O'Reilly cases as well. Granted, I'm certain that not every single woman coming forth is 100% earnest in her accusations. Some are probably just trying to game the system, looking for a paycheck, some drama, or their 15 minutes of fame. It happens. If you remember a while back, there was a gay pastor who lied about buying a cake that had a homophobic slur written on it in icing. Let's not forget the hundreds, if not thousands, of men who have been cheated out of their studies in major universities due to false accusations of rape and sexual misconduct, and Title IX being the overzealous crap pile that it is. It's about time we finally see the light on the extremely shady underbelly of Hollywood, and now, even the cartoons we choose to show our children are exposing details. Things that we probably don't want to admit, but need to come to light. It's sad. Add this to the ever-increasing list of death knells for traditional media. Am I right? Speaking of sexual assault, Corey Feldman's back in the news and has finally decided to break his silence on the way he and many of his childhood friends were groomed and abused. It's about time, after all, seeing as the statute of limitations that once protected said abusers has been completely nullified, thus also invalidating the agreement he claimed to have signed in regards to maintaining silence. So he's finally going to come out with the whole truth. Great. Oh, on one condition. He wants $10 million in exchange through crowdfunding. According to his Indiegogo page, he will be making a documentary exposing the truth and plans to use a good chunk of the money, itself 5 times his current net worth, for security, to protect himself and his friends and family, believing that he could very well be assassinated. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Oh, wait. The Weinsteins probably are involved in this somehow, and we know that they're bedroom buddies with Hillary Clinton, who has had people's lawyers assassinated in the past. So actually, this might not be outside of the realm of reason. Granted, I understand his perspective. It's obvious that the state of California doesn't want him to talk. They arrested him just 2 days ago after he issued a statement urging people to speak out against sexual assault. What did they arrest him for? Drug charges. We know that the state of California's law enforcement and lawmakers are all in cahoots with Hollywood and many of its production companies, so it makes sense that they don't want him to squeal. Here's what's so messed up about this. What drug charges? Traveling with a guy in possession of medicinal marijuana that was outside of an approved container. Remember, this is California we're talking about here. The place where you can have medicinal marijuana on you at any time. The place where you can have up to an ounce on you for recreational purposes as long as you're not smoking in a public place. And the place probably most heavily championing the use of this plant. He said a member of his crew was traveling with him, had the medicinal marijuana, card and script, but didn't have the approved container. I get it, California does consider the smell of marijuana probable cause for searching a vehicle. due to its laws against driving under the influence. However, he was detained for something someone else did, who just so happened to be in connection with him, which is an incredibly minor violation of what's frankly a legal technicality. The weed was not in the approved container. Big whoop. That's it. That's what he was arrested for. This could be one of two things. Either Feldman fabricated part of the story for attention, or our little conspiracy theory about law enforcement and Hollywood child abusers being in cahoots is starting to hold a little bit of water. There haven't been any reports on whether or not they gave him a follicle test or anything like that, which would have proved that he, as he claims, was completely innocent, had not been using the drug, at least not while driving, but we don't have much more information going on about that. They actually did the same to Rose McGowan. She's wanted for felony drug possession. Now we know what you're thinking. Last time we dealt with her on this show, she was guilty of one thing and trying to claim she was being punished for another. And the truth is, she did in fact have a warrant for arrest due to carrying traces of narcotics on an airplane. Here's what bothers me about this though. Nowhere does any report state what kind of narcotics, nor how much was found. Narcotics, by the way, could be anything from marijuana or hydrocodone to crack cocaine, mind you. It's not known if she was aware of the arrest warrant as she was released from custody shortly after being detained. It's highly possible, I'm not entirely sure how likely though, that she's being targeted due to speaking out against Weinstein, again by having something enforced against her that would not be enforced for someone not connected to the scandal, or at least, not in the same manner. And by having a warrant from almost a year ago brought up so suddenly, I'd say I smell conspiracy, but this is Rose McGowan we're talking about, and my good friend Occam might put a razor to my throat if I did. But back to Feldman. He wants $10 million before coming clean about something that is continuing to hurt children and their families every day. You know something, Corey? You're just as sick as all the pedos in that Hollywood sex ring you're talking about that you claim to be fighting against. You have information that could lead to the arrest of, as you claim, half a dozen men, one of whom is quote-unquote very powerful, as you say, but you want to sell that information. You don't want to just give it out. If any of those men so much as lay a finger on a child, heck, if they so much as think about casting a child in one of their productions with any sort of malintent, you, Corey, are an accessory to child rape. You know that? Remember Cassie J's The Red Pill? You know how much it cost to make that? $211,000, and that was way beyond what her goal was. How can you possibly say you need that much money to make a documentary that exorbitant to expose a few pedophiles? People already believe you, Corey, especially post-Weinstein. Worried about your own safety? Join the witness protection program like everyone else. Don't try to guilt people into dropping millions of dollars on a has-been child actor looking for a new project to focus his attention on. We all know what's going on, Corey, and if you don't squeal, someone else will, and when he or she does, your little film project is done for. Or you can just start talking to yourself. That totally works, right? A few days back, Feldman was on the Dr. Oz show where he dropped the first name, John Grissom. Oh, come on, Corey. I thought you said you had names for us. Who even is this guy? Let's check IMDb. He's been in 2 whole films and was arrested more than 15 years ago for child molestation charges. I'm starting to wonder if anything's actually going to come out of this $10 million extortion scheme you got going here, Corey. And judging by the fact that he's only earned $200,000 so far, he's probably starting to get nervous, hoping that if he drops some bait in the water, he might attract some suckerfish. People, don't be a suckerfish. Don't give him any money. Don't let him make this film just to extort money out of people. And all this in the wake of Kevin Spacey coming out, yeah, that also happened. The 58-year-old House of Cards star was accused by not only several members of the show's cast and crew of sexual misconduct, but it also came out that way back in the 80s, he harassed then 14-year-old Anthony Rapp. He tried to cover it all up by claiming that he was gay, having this big coming out moment, hoping that the more progressive media outlets would upstage everyone else with their fluffy op-eds about how brave he is. Cold, callous, and disgusting, Spacey. Pro tip, next time, claim to be a practicing Muslim. Remember how I said earlier that Feldman claims one of these people was incredibly powerful? Would it be such a leap of logic to wonder if Spacey isn't at least one of the people on that list, and that Feldman's decision to drop Grissom's name was actually just a result of Spacey getting caught? Matt Damon and Quentin Tarantino also came out revealing that, yes, they knew everything that was going on with Weinstein and did nothing about it. Joining them in the sin bin are Brad Pitt, Ben Affleck, and George Clooney, all of whom knew the truth and did nothing. It doesn't help that Damon and Clooney just released the film Suburbicon, which turned out to be garbage anyway, and people are slamming them for their collusion and complicity towards Weinstein. Yeah, their careers are in the toilets now. When Jigsaw's somewhat dodgy retreading of the critically panned yet somehow still successful Saw franchise gets better critical reviews than a Clooney film, you know it's over. Alright, next we have a very recent tragedy. Sunday morning, Texan Devin Patrick Kelly showed up at church in Sutherland Springs. He killed 26, including a 17-month-old girl, as well as a woman in her 70s. He also killed his own grandmother-in-law and injured pretty much every present member of the congregation. Why? Because of anger at his mother-in-law and anger at the Christian community. His mother-in-law, by the way, wasn't actually there at the time. so he just opened fire on everyone else. He was then pursued by your typical Texans. You got a cowboy hat wearing Johnny Langendorf and another unnamed parishioner who just so happened to have his own weapon on him, who chased him down in his vehicle. With nowhere else to turn, Kelly turned another weapon on himself. He had several more in the vehicle at the time. And all every media outlet seems to be able to do is complain about him having access to a big black gun, completely ignoring, in particular, the unnamed man who forced Kelly to drop his weapon and flee, putting an end to the carnage. You know what that man is? A hero. You know what Langendorf is? A hero. These men are heroes. This is what you should be talking about, CNN. Let's be clear about a few things. This was a legally purchased firearm by a man who passed his background checks. This was a weapon that was in his illegal possession at the time of the crime. In Texas, even though they have a fairly libertarian gun ownership system, they also have very strict laws preventing former soldiers who were discharged dishonorably from possessing them outside of their homes. This was a man who had a history of making violent threats via text message, and of course, an AR-556 is a semi-automatic weapon that is legal to purchase and own. It's horrible. It's tragic. The facts that he was an atheist or may have had ties to Antifa are irrelevant right now. What matters is that once again, people are forcing others to suffer due to no fault of their own. I don't think it's appropriate right now for anyone to politicize such a situation, and it would be hypocritical of me to do so, and then speak out against the Hollywood elites demanding stricter gun control or crying over the mere existence of a big black rifle. But you know something? When you jump off your moral cloud and you feel God's green earth underneath your feet, you might come to the harsh realization that there was nothing anybody could have done here. There was no way to prevent this from happening. It's a shame, but let's face it, it couldn't have been prevented by anyone other than Gunman himself, and that's what we need to take away from this. We need to work as a community to prevent these kinds of things from happening, not immediately start pointing fingers and blaming everyone else for something that nobody had any control of. Alright, speaking of shootings, and the moment you've all been waiting for, the JFK files were finally released, and nobody's really surprised that they actually didn't divulge anything other than further implicate Oswald, and we're still not entirely sure if he was working alone or not. We found out that some people perceived him as a threat before the incident and had reported him to the FBI. We found out Kennedy was an instrumental figure in the practice of the CIA using mafia members to conduct foreign assassinations. Apparently that was a thing, but Kennedy helped, push that out of fashion. Apparently, the FBI knew Jack Ruby was trying to assassinate Oswald all along, and we found out, no surprise here, that Kennedy had nothing to do with the assassination of Ngo Dinh Diem, former president of Vietnam. And that's really all that these files divulged. Oswald was a Soviet sympathizer, but otherwise a lone vigilante, basically the Gavrilo Princip of the mid-20th century. He tried to get involved with Cuba as well, and they weren't having any of that. He was a commie fanboy with a gun, and that's pretty much it. And considering JFK was a huge anti-communist advocate, and especially pacifistic at that. Basically, Oswald's polar opposite, an anarchistic, angry commie with a gun. Oswald's motive was clear and predictable, and that's really it. That's the JFK assassination, a lone gunman with a vendetta. President Trump has reclassified a few documents most likely tied to the Kremlin on the grounds of national security, which he plans to reveal in the very near future for the sake of transparency, and my guess is it will probably be a whole lot of nothing. Again, zilch. Another news story that dropped last week, which again just goes to show the depravity of the world that we live in, follows a judo match in the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, home to both Dubai and Abu Dhabi, is considered by many to be a progressive modern Muslim nation that still practices slavery, still kills homosexuals, and still jails women for being, human beings. Tal Flicker is a judo master from Israel and the current world champion in his weight class. As is customary at these championships, they play the national anthem of the champion's homeland while he receives his medal. That's usually how these things are done. The Olympics do it. The World Cup does it. Hey, 90s kids, you still with me? Remember how they used to do that on the show Global Guts? A kid's show? It's not an uncommon practice. You play the victor's national anthem. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign of acknowledgement of that person's superiority in the sport. But they refused to play Hatikva, the Israeli national anthem, and he wasn't allowed to display the Star of David on his uniform during the competition. Why? Because the UAE politicizes everything and are huge Palestine supporters, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Palestine, where they bounty hunt Jewish citizens and foreign sympathizers. Palestine, where they also treat their own people like dirt. Palestine, whom they believe to be the rightful heirs of the land, a land that's only 20,000 kilometers in area, and probably the jewel of the Middle East. Yeah, they believe that Israel is their land. So the entire Muslim world hates Israel. Why? One, because they're Jewish, and two, because they believe they're on their land. Of course, not everyone feels this way about Israel. Israel isn't the friendliest place to Muslims after all. They treat Muslim citizens leagues better than Muslim majority nations treat their Jews, but they're still a minority and don't have entirely equal representation in government or social culture. They suffer from what we sometimes call here in the West microaggressions, and some of the citizens are somewhat racist. Culturally insensitive, at least. Basically, Muslims in Israel are treated the way blacks were once treated in the US. The same way some people still believe blacks are treated in the US. I seriously can't think of any other reason why so many Americans and Europeans could possibly hate Israel so much other than that they see the small country as a mirror of some of our own social structure in the West, and they project these sentiments upon them. Either that, or a lot of people are just anti-Semites, possibly even racist themselves. If you don't want these people to have this land, the only homeland they have, and you can't propose a location for a Jewish state in a safer part of the world, you're a Jew hater. You don't want these people to have a place to live. If you're in a Muslim majority country and you can't accept the idea of land being occupied by Jews, just land, because you sympathize with Palestine, you're the political equivalent of a spiteful child who is jealous of his mother's newborn baby. You're a psychopath. That's what Muslim Middle East is. A whole bunch of psychopathic fanatics who don't care what they have to do so long as the Jews are dead and so long as their pedophile prophet would have been happy. All this over a tiny little strip of land that they lost fair and square in a war a long, long time ago. It's pathetic. Even the International Judo Federation, IJF, condemns this behavior. And remember back in the Summer Olympics of 2016, an Egyptian martial artist refused to shake hands with an Israeli competitor. Tunisia won't even compete with them out of fear of looking bad for losing to the Zion state. We're never going to achieve any sort of harmony with this region of the world, people. They're waging constant wars with people who are ethnically the same as them, with the same genetic origins and whatnot, who speak languages in the same family as them, over nothing more than the name of God. Christians and Jews get along just fine. Why can't Muslims? Speaking of Islam, remember Bo Bergdahl, the army sergeant who was held captive by the Taliban? Oh yeah, he won't be receiving any prison time. Why? Because, yet again, a judge who is supposed to uphold the law and the Constitution is more concerned with political alignment than anything else. We traded 5 terror leaders for his sorry hide. He's not even going to be serving jail time. All just because, according to the judge, he suffered enough. You know what we should be doing? Skinning him alive, as well as his sympathizer father, and turning their hides into bomber jackets and combat boots. They'd be more used to the safety of Western people as shoe leather than living, breathing men. Bergdahl also said he wants the dishonorable discharge thing removed from his record because he claims it carries a stigma. Pause the show for a moment, if you want. Scream a few times. President Trump certainly did on Twitter following this ruling. And finally, we have yet another shady deal tied to the Clintons. Hillary was hired by the DNC to make decisions on hiring spending in regards to the election season, as part of a deal in which she paid off several monetary debts that the DNC held at that time. Even Donna Brazile, former DNC chair, has come forward admitting it and has detailed the transaction in her new book. It's believed that this is why Bernie Sanders had no chance of winning the votes of the superdelegate pack during the DNC primaries last year. Yeah, Brazile's probably going to turn up dead under mysterious circumstances in the next couple of days. We're actually going to be wrapping this show and this topic up a little bit prematurely this week, but worry not, because we're actually doing a second episode this week. Yay! In which we detail the election debacle in more detail, and we celebrate and scrutinize the surprise election of Donald J. Trump as our president, now a whole year ago. It's been a great week for the truth, everyone. Be seeing ya. Like what you heard? Hate what you heard? Want to see me dead? Follow me on Twitter at Squeak_Attack and join our Squeak Attack feed Facebook group and fan page. Rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. Leave a comment on the blog. And as always, have a good day.